I'm going to go ahead and start a short video presentation on SafSour LP 652, our new dry Lactobacillus, Lactobacillus plantarum dry bacteria. And then following that video, we'll have a Q&A, and I think with this few of people, I can I might be able to figure out how to activate your microphones so you can ask questions. Otherwise, we'll just use the chat feature here on the right. Feel free to type in any questions you have in the chat as well. But I'll go ahead and start the video, and hopefully this works. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about a new product range for Fermentis. SafSour LP 652 is the first bacteria in the Fermentis range and is ideal for production of kettle soured beers. So what is a kettle soured beer? Well, first, while the term kettle sour may be very familiar to some of us and give us a clear impression in our minds of what this beer might taste like, it's not a recognized beer style. Rather, kettle souring is a production method used to acidify unhopped wort using lactic acid producing bacteria. The pH of kettle soured beers is typically between 3 and 3.6 pH. And they're not really the same as traditional mixed fermentation sour beers. Kettle sours are, the lactic fermentation occurs on the hot side of the brewery, whereas with traditional mixed fermentation, the lactic fermentation is happening usually along with the alcoholic fermentation on the cold side, in the fermenters, in foeders or barrels, and even in the bottle, and extended aging is usually required. So here at the top of the slide in orange, we look at the basic traditional brewing process. So we have milling, mashing, lautering, boiling where hops are typically added, cooling, then the alcoholic fermentation, maturation, and then packaging. The kettle souring process introduces a lactic fermentation following wort runoff and prior to the boil. Once the wort is collected, it is common practice to bring the wort to a short boil in order to pasteurize and eliminate potential competition from other microorganisms. And it's important to note that hops are not added prior to or during the lactic fermentation, as hops inhibit the growth and metabolism of lactic bacteria. Therefore, presence would inhibit the fermentation. Once the wort is sanitized, it is cooled to a temperature that will be optimal for the bacteria strain chosen. And then once sufficiently cooled, the wort is inoculated with lactic acid bacteria and the lactic fermentation begins. Lactic fermentation typically takes from 24 to 36 hours, perhaps up to 48 hours. Depending on the brewery's equipment capabilities, a specific temperature may be maintained during the entire lactic fermentation, or an alternative would be to pitch the wort at the high end of the optimal range for that bacteria, and then allow the lactic fermentation to occur as the wort cools. Either way, once the lactic fermentation is complete, the traditional brewing process resumes with the full boil, hop additions, cooling, alcoholic fermentation with yeast, and finally the maturation and packaging. So why would you choose to produce a kettle sour beer? The benefits, there's a lot of benefits with producing kettle sour beers. For many brewers, kettle souring offers a method for experimenting with bacteria while minimizing the risk of contamination on the cold side of the brewery because the bacteria are inactivated during the boil. With kettle souring, it's very easy to control the process and produce a consistent, repeatable product. And unlike with traditional mixed fermentation beers, There is no extended aging in foeders, barrels, or bottles for extended periods of time. And this quick turnover reduces the overall production cost of a kettle sour, which results in an attractive price point for the consumer. Traditionally produced mixed fermentation beers often cost considerably more than kettle sour beers. Now, kettle sours aren't nearly as complex as traditional sours, but they're typically very clean, very refreshing, and provide an excellent backdrop for fruit additions, flavorings, or the use of bittering and dry hops. They're really kind of a blank canvas for experimentation. And they can really contribute to the overall diversity of flavor experiences offered by a particular brewery. Flavors that often compete with other beverage categories like wine, cocktails, ready-to-drink cocktails, and the flavors of a kettle sour can appeal to people that may not be typical beer consumers. As I mentioned earlier, kettle soured beers are not a style in and of themselves, and beers produced with the kettle sour method generally fall into a broader category of sour beers, including those produced with traditional mixed fermentation. Compared with other beer styles, at least in the US market, sour beers do not represent a significantly large volume, but they are among the top 10 fastest growing styles, according to Nielsen Craft Beer Snapshot released in 2019. The value of sour and American Wild Ale category grew 31% from 2018 to 2019, and they continue to be very popular with consumers. So to offer brewers a new and interesting solution for producing sour beers, Fermentis has released the first bacteria in our range, SafSour LP 652. The LP stands for Lactobacillus plantarum, and it was specifically selected by Fermentis for the production of kettle sour beers. The Fermentis sensory panel noted that beers produced with SafSour LP 652 produced beers with tropical, citrus, and other fruity notes, and were also very refreshing in taste. Being a homofermentative bacteria, SafSour LP 652 produces mainly lactic acid, but also a small amount of acetic acid. And finally, as with most of our brewing yeasts, SafSour LP 652 is certified easy to use and can be pitched directly into prepared wort. Lactic fermentation time with SafSour LP 652 is typically between 24 and 36 hours and tends to produce a soured wort between 3.2 and 3.6 pH. Each package of LP 652 contains greater than 3 billion viable cells per gram, and we recommend dosing at about 10 grams per hectoliter. One package of LP 652 current format is 100 grams, though larger formats may be available in the future. We do recommend to pitch directly into the cooled wort at a fermentation temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius, plus or minus 3 degrees. And LP 652 can simply be stored as you would with any of our SAF yeasts in a cool, dry condition below 4 degrees Celsius. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn more about SafSour LP 652, please come visit us at the Fermentis virtual booth. Okay, that was the short video. We still got a couple people with us here. I'm going to try to activate microphones and see if anybody has any questions. We'll see if I can figure out how to do that, though. I think we might just have to have you type in questions in the chat. It's not immediately evident to me how to activate. Lucky, George, any questions? Marcelo, any questions? Okay. Don't be shy. I think the 2 attendees we still have, I think, is watching webcast. Normally that happens when somebody's watching on a cell phone, and I don't think that I can activate microphones or video in that situation. So that might be what's going on. But ask any questions you have. Okay, Marcelo, you're the only one still here with us if you're watching. So if you don't have any questions, we're probably going to go ahead and close the session. Okay. I don't see any typing, so I think we're gonna call it. If you have any, I'm gonna put my email here. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to help you out. All right. Now it's just you and me, Kevin. Oh, nope. He's back.